Hey there, amazing friends. I warmly invite you to join me on this exciting journey by subscribing to my channel, liking, commenting, and sharing my videos. Every like, comment, and share brings us closer together and fuels my passion to create more great contents. Your support truly makes all the difference. Thank you for being the heart of this community. The Ancient Seeds and Early Sparks Prologue. The masks we wear in the shadowed recesses of power, behind closed doors and behind thick veils of secrecy. A select few have long understood that truth can be manipulated. They believe that fear, when manufactured, could unite a nation, justify wars, and topple regimes. This is the story of false flag operations, a tale of staged provocations, of carefully orchestrated incidents that changed the course of history. From the embers of ancient conflicts to the modern era of global warfare, the strategies of deception have been as old as politics itself. Imagine a council of advisors in an ancient hall where men in togas and laurel wreaths huddle around a scroll. They whisper of subterfuge and the power of illusion. A single, carefully staged attack could turn a rival into a villain overnight. These were not merely legends. Fragments of truth survive in the dusty chronicles of history. Over the centuries, the art of deception has evolved, adapting to new technologies and new media, yet always with the same cold logic. Control the narrative, and you control the world. In this grand theater of deception, no event is too small, no detail too trivial to escape the scrutiny of those who seek to bend reality for their own ends. As we journey through the corridors of history, we will encounter provocations that have been credited with igniting wars, toppling governments, and reshaping entire societies. Whether the conspiracies are fully substantiated or remain tantalizing hints hidden in redacted documents, one thing is clear. The legacy of false flag operations is etched into the very fabric of modern history. Ancient foundations, when deception first took root long before the era of telegraphs, radios, and classified files, ancient civilizations knew that appearances could be artfully manipulated. In the marbled courts of Sparta, for instance, a cunning general once devised a ruse so subtle that his soldiers, disguised in the enemy's colors, set fire to a border village. The flames that licked the night sky were not the result of a rival's attack, but a calculated maneuver to incite outrage and unify the citizenry. According to the few surviving accounts from Spartan historians, the enemy was invented overnight, a phantom that allowed the state to rally its forces for war. Rome, too, has its own legends of deception. Fragments of texts and later commentaries hint that ambitious senators, coveting new territories, might have bribed local mercenaries to launch attacks on remote settlements. In the ensuing chaos, the blame would be cast on barbarian tribes, and Rome would swiftly mobilize to defend its borders. Although no complete record survives, these accounts suggest that even in antiquity, leaders were prepared to manufacture crises for the sake of conquest. Medieval Europe was no stranger to such stratagems. In the fractious world of feudal loyalties, a minor duke might stage an attack on his own lands, masquerading as an enemy incursion. Chronicles from Italian city-states refer in passing to secret provocations and false assaults that were never fully explained, only hinted at by furtive comments in the margins of dusty manuscripts. These early episodes, though small in scale, established a timeless principle. If you can ignite fear, even if by illusion, you can seize power. Thus, the ancient foundations of false flag operations were laid not in grand declarations, but in the quiet, calculated actions of those who understood that perception is everything. The seeds sown by the Spartans, the Romans, and the medieval dukes would eventually blossom into the modern techniques of manipulation that we now examine. The dawn of the modern era, communication as a catalyst, the invention of the printing press in the 15th century heralded a revolution in communication. Soon, news traveled not only by word of mouth, but by printed pamphlets and broadsheets. By the late 19th century, the telegraph and later radio transformed the landscape of public opinion. Empires, now hungry for influence on the global stage, discovered that a single well-publicized incident could sway millions. One such event was the sinking of the USS Maine in 1898. The explosion in Havana Harbor, which claimed hundreds of American sailors, was officially attributed to Spanish sabotage. Sensationalist newspapers, notably those owned by William Randolph Hearst, fanned the flames of outrage. "Remember the Maine," they cried, and soon public opinion was galvanized in favor of war. Although modern historians debate whether the explosion was accidental or the result of deliberate sabotage, the effect was undeniable. The incident provided a powerful pretext for the Spanish-American War and the subsequent expansion of American influence. Similarly, the Reichstag fire of 1933 in Berlin became a pivotal moment in German history. In a night of chaos, the German parliament building was engulfed in flames. A lone Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, was quickly singled out as the culprit. Yet many now suspect that high-ranking Nazi officials may have had a hand in orchestrating the fire. The ensuing political crisis allowed Adolf Hitler to suspend civil liberties and consolidate power, paving the way for totalitarian rule. Whether or not the fire was entirely staged, its exploitation as a false flag operation is now a subject of heated debate among historians and conspiracy theorists alike. These modern incidents illustrate how technological advancements in communication have amplified the power of deception. A single engineered crisis can be broadcast to an entire nation, and indeed the world, in mere moments, leaving little time for dissent or critical analysis. The Cold War, a theater of shadows and schemes. As the world entered the tense era of the Cold War, the stakes of deception grew ever higher. Two superpowers, locked in an ideological and geopolitical struggle, relied not only on military might, but on covert operations and psychological warfare. In this climate of pervasive suspicion, proposals for staged provocations were not only conceivable, but, as later documents would reveal, sometimes seriously contemplated. One infamous example is Operation Northwoods, a plan devised by the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1962. Northwoods proposed a series of covert operations, including hijackings, bombings, and staged terrorist acts on U.S. soil that would be blamed on Cuba. The objective was to generate public support for a full-scale invasion of Cuba. Although President Kennedy ultimately rejected the plan, its existence, later revealed through declassified documents, offers chilling evidence that the machinery of state power had once considered manufacturing crises as a strategic tool. The Soviet Union, too, engaged in elaborate disinformation campaigns and covert provocations. Both sides were adept at blurring the lines between real threats and manufactured ones. Intelligence agencies on both sides orchestrated operations designed to sow confusion and incite preemptive actions. The Cold War became a grand theater of shadows, a domain in which fear was cultivated as a weapon and where truth was sacrificed on the altar of survival. For those who study this period, the legacy of Cold War deception is a reminder that the strategies of the past continue to inform the tactics of the present. The mechanisms that allowed false flag operations to thrive during the Cold War are not relics of history. They have evolved, adapting to new technologies and new global challenges. The digital age and the rise of cyber illusions in the 21st century, the canvas of false flag operations has expanded into the digital realm. Advances in technology have enabled the rapid spread of information and misinformation across the globe. Deepfake videos, manipulated audio recordings, and sophisticated computer simulations have made it possible to fabricate events with astonishing realism. The potential for a digital false flag is immense. A single, convincingly produced video could spark international crises before forensic analysts can verify its authenticity. In recent years, some have claimed that certain cyber attacks and media leaks were not merely acts of terrorism or espionage, but deliberate false flag operations designed to shape public policy. Allegations that governments have staged terror attacks or crises through digital means, planting evidence that implicates an enemy nation or faction, have proliferated online. While many of these claims remain unverified, they have contributed to a growing sense of distrust among the public. In a world where every image and soundbite can be questioned, the line between reality and illusion becomes perilously thin. For state actors, the digital age presents both a powerful tool and a grave risk. On the one hand, the ability to disseminate a false narrative on a global scale is more potent than ever. On the other, the very technology that enables such deceptions also provides the means to debunk them, if only there is enough transparency. As governments navigate this complex terrain, the specter of cyber false flags looms large, challenging our collective ability to discern truth from fabrication. The moral quagmire, when truth is for sale at its heart. The phenomenon of false flag operations is not merely a technical or strategic challenge, it is a profound moral quandary. When governments or shadowy organizations deliberately engineer crises, they betray the trust of their citizens. The manipulation of public sentiment for political gain undermines the very foundations of democracy. If leaders are willing to sacrifice truth in the pursuit of power, what hope remains for genuine accountability and justice? Consider the human cost of such deceptions. Wars have been waged, lives have been lost, and entire populations have been conscripted into conflicts sparked by false pretenses. Families have been torn apart by tragedies that, in many cases, may have been manufactured for the sake of political expediency. The ripple effects of these operations are not confined to the pages of classified documents. They echo through generations, leaving scars on the collective consciousness of nations. Philosophers and ethicists debate whether any end can truly justify such means. Realists might argue that in times of existential threat, leaders are forced to make impossible choices. Yet for human rights advocates, the deliberate manipulation of truth is anathema to the principles of justice and freedom. This moral tension continues to simmer in academic halls, policy debates, and the everyday conversations of citizens who find themselves caught between official narratives and whispered truths. The search for accountability, a call for transparency, one of the most potent antidotes to the corrosive effects of false flag operations is transparency. When governments hide behind walls of secrecy, they inadvertently create fertile ground for conspiracy theories. The lack of accessible, reliable information forces citizens to rely on unofficial channels where rumors and half-truths flourish. Independent journalism, open government initiatives, and robust oversight mechanisms are essential to counteract this trend. Across the decades, various whistleblowers have risked everything to expose the hidden machinations behind major events. Their revelations, sometimes captured in declassified documents, sometimes in tearful testimonies, offer a glimmer of hope that truth can ultimately prevail. However, even when such disclosures occur, they are often met with denials, redactions, or outright dismissals by those in power. The struggle for accountability is an ongoing battle, one that requires constant vigilance from an informed citizenry. For society to move forward, it is crucial that we cultivate a culture of skepticism balanced with reason. Citizens must learn to critically evaluate official statements, demand evidence, and hold their leaders accountable. Only through such efforts can we hope to minimize the impact of orchestrated deceptions and reclaim a measure of trust in our institutions. The future of deception, navigating a shifting landscape as technology continues to evolve, so too will the methods of deception. In the coming decades, false flag operations may not involve physical attacks or staged incidents on the battlefield. They may instead be executed entirely in the digital realm. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and advanced cyber warfare techniques offer both unprecedented opportunities and terrifying risks. Imagine a future in which a single deepfake video circulating worldwide in minutes could incite international conflict before forensic experts can debunk it. The potential for digital false flags is vast, and the consequences could be catastrophic if left unchecked. Yet there is reason for cautious optimism. As new technologies emerge, so do new methods of verification and accountability. Blockchain-based systems, for instance, promise to create immutable records of critical data, making it harder for false narratives to take root. Independent fact-checking networks and global collaborative investigations may provide a counterbalance to the tide of disinformation. The challenge will be to harness these tools effectively and ensure that transparency remains paramount in an era of rapid technological change. The personal toll, lives shaped by illusions beyond the grand narratives of wars and political upheavals. False flag operations have a profound impact on individual lives. Consider the soldiers sent to fight in conflicts sparked by manufactured crises. Their families grieve losses that, in hindsight, may have been avoidable if the truth had been allowed to emerge. Civilians caught in the crossfire of wars initiated by deception are left with memories of unspeakable suffering, while entire communities grapple with a loss of trust in their leaders. One such story is that of a young man named Samuel Reyes, whose father was conscripted into a war that erupted in the wake of a staged attack. Samuel's father, a farmer from a small town, never fully recovered from the psychological trauma of witnessing his comrades fall on battlefields that, according to later investigations, were lit by manipulated provocations. Samuel grew up questioning the official narratives, dedicating his life to the pursuit of truth. His journey, filled with interviews, archival research, and encounters with survivors, became a microcosm of the larger struggle for accountability. Stories like his remind us that behind every manipulated event are countless personal tragedies that deserve remembrance and justice. The global web, how false flags reshape history, from ancient city-states to modern superpowers. False flag operations have woven a complex web across the tapestry of history. Every time a provocative event is engineered or exploited, it has the potential to set off a chain reaction of events, mobilizing entire populations, triggering wars, and redrawing national boundaries. Whether it is the spark that ignited the Spanish-American War, the flames that consumed the Reichstag, or the digital deceptions that may define future conflicts, the underlying principle is the same. Control the narrative, and you control the destiny of nations. Historians continue to debate the true extent of false flag operations. Some argue that many crises have been manipulated, either partially or wholly, to serve the interests of a powerful few. Others contend that while deceptions do occur, they are often exaggerated by those who mistrust authority. What remains undeniable, however, is that the fear of false flags has become deeply embedded in the collective psyche. It is a reminder that even as technology and society evolve, the basic human impulses of fear, ambition, and the desire for power remain constant. Epilogue: the call to vigilance. As we close this exploration of false flag operations, we are left with more questions than answers. The legacy of deception is both a warning and a challenge. It calls on us to remain ever vigilant, to demand transparency, and to scrutinize every narrative, even those presented by our own leaders. If the events we have examined are any indication, the art of manipulating truth is as ancient as civilization itself. Yet, in an age where technology can both fabricate and verify with unprecedented speed, we must strive to balance healthy skepticism with a commitment to fact. The future may hold new forms of deception, digital false flags, cyber provocations, or even simulated alien invasions, but the principle remains unchanged. Only through collective inquiry and unwavering demand for accountability can we hope to safeguard our freedom. The inside story of false flag operations is not just a chronicle of historical events. It is a mirror reflecting the vulnerabilities of our societies, the fragility of truth, and the enduring human quest for power. May this narrative inspire you to look beyond the surface, to question with an open yet critical mind, and to remember that in the grand theater of deception, the masks we wear may one day be unmasked. Shadows of the Cold War, and beyond the Cold War's darkest corners, as the world plunged into the tense and polarized atmosphere of the Cold War, deception reached new levels of sophistication. Both the United States and the Soviet Union, locked in an ideological struggle for global supremacy, found that the ability to control information and manufacture crises was as valuable as any nuclear arsenal. In clandestine meeting rooms deep within secure government facilities, high-ranking military officials and intelligence officers debated the merits of using staged provocations to justify preemptive actions. One particularly notorious proposal, the much-discussed Operation Northwoods, outlined a series of covert actions that included simulated hijackings, bombings, and even the orchestration of terror incidents on U.S. soil. Although the plan was never enacted, thanks to a decisive veto by President Kennedy, its very existence sent ripples of shock through the corridors of power and the public's collective memory. For many in the intelligence community, Northwoods was not an isolated aberration, but part of a broader strategy, a mindset that if a crisis could be engineered, then the state might secure the moral authority to act decisively. Both superpowers dabbled in disinformation, feeding contradictory signals to their adversaries while masking their true intentions behind layers of secrecy. Agents on both sides developed sophisticated methods for leaking partial data, ensuring that when crises did occur, the official narrative would appear seamless, even if it had been carefully scripted behind closed doors. During these years, numerous smaller-scale provocations took place. In Eastern Europe, whispers spread of stay-behind networks designed to spark local uprisings that could be blamed on communist infiltrators. In Western Europe, clandestine operations sometimes fanned the flames of political unrest by staging isolated incidents and attributing them to extremist groups. The net result was a pervasive atmosphere of suspicion, where no crisis could be taken at face value, and every major event was suspect to hidden manipulations. Modern deceptions, digital shadows, and global crises, the turn of the millennium introduced an entirely new battlefield, cyberspace. In an age when every image, video, and audio clip could be manipulated with astonishing realism, the potential for false flag operations expanded dramatically. Advanced deepfake technologies and AI-generated content now offered state and non-state actors alike the ability to fabricate crises within minutes, sending shockwaves across global communications networks before any verifiable evidence could be gathered. In boardrooms and secure labs, military strategists began to consider scenarios in which digital false flags could trigger international incidents. Imagine a convincingly produced video of a foreign leader issuing an inflammatory declaration, or a computer-generated audio clip simulating an imminent cyber attack on critical infrastructure. The very tools that now enable widespread disinformation also pose the risk that future crises might be entirely digital in nature, where a false narrative, once disseminated, could spark economic turmoil or even armed conflict before the truth emerges. These developments have forced experts and government officials to rethink traditional methods of verification and accountability. New technologies, blockchain-based data authentication systems, independent fact-checking networks, and global digital archives are being developed as countermeasures. Yet even as these tools improve, the sheer volume and speed of digital content leave open the possibility that well-orchestrated false flags might slip through the cracks. The digital era has also intensified public skepticism. Every major crisis, whether a terror attack, a natural disaster, or an unexpected political upheaval, is now immediately accompanied by online debates and alternative narratives. In this environment, even events with overwhelming evidence can be clouded by persistent conspiracy theories that claim everything is a staged performance. The challenge for society is to develop a healthy skepticism that encourages critical inquiry without descending into blanket distrust. The personal toll, lives torn by deception, while the grand narratives of wars and regime changes dominate the history books. The real tragedy of false flag operations is found in their human cost. Families have been ripped apart by wars initiated on manufactured pretexts. Soldiers, conscripted into conflicts built on manipulated narratives, return home to lives marked by trauma and disillusionment. Civilians, caught in the crossfire of wars sparked by deceptive provocations, face the loss of loved ones and the erosion of public trust. Take the story of Samuel Reyes, a young man whose father was conscripted into a war that erupted following a dubious intelligence incident during the Cold War. Samuel grew up with a lingering sense of betrayal, haunted by the fact that his father's life was forever altered by events that might have been engineered to serve hidden agendas. As Samuel matured, he devoted himself to uncovering the truth behind government secrecy, conducting interviews with former intelligence officers, and poring over declassified documents. His journey, filled with personal loss and moral questioning, became a symbol of the broader struggle for accountability in a world where truth is too often manipulated. Stories like Samuel's are repeated across generations. In every conflict driven by manipulated provocations, there are countless untold tales of personal tragedy, of parents mourning missing children, of communities left to pick up the pieces of shattered trust. These individual narratives are the true legacy of false flag operations, a legacy that underscores the moral imperative for transparency and accountability. The global impact, how illusions reshape nations, false flag operations have a way of reverberating far beyond the immediate crisis. When a government stages, or is suspected of staging, a provocation, the ripple effects can alter the trajectory of entire nations. Wars have been launched, regimes toppled, and alliances forged in the wake of such events. The sinking of the USS Maine, the Reichstag fire, and the Gulf of Tonkin incident are just a few examples where the manipulation of events reshaped history. The impact of these operations is not confined to military or political arenas. They also shape the cultural and psychological landscape of societies. In the wake of a major false flag, public trust in institutions is shattered. The belief that one's leaders may be capable of manipulating reality leads to a pervasive cynicism that can erode the social fabric. Conspiracy theories flourish, and every new crisis is met with suspicion rather than unity. The cycle of deception and distrust feeds itself, making it ever more difficult for societies to recover from manipulated tragedies. This global impact also influences international relations. When one nation is accused of orchestrating a false flag, diplomatic ties can fray, alliances can crumble, and the balance of power can shift dramatically. The geopolitical chess game becomes one where every move is shrouded in uncertainty, and the true motivations of leaders remain hidden behind layers of secrecy. In this climate, the only certainty is that the manipulation of truth and the fear it engenders remains a powerful tool in the arsenal of statecraft. The struggle for accountability and the future of truth. In the aftermath of each alleged false flag operation, there emerges a battle for accountability. Whistleblowers risk everything to expose hidden documents, while investigative journalists dig through layers of classified archives in search of truth. Yet even when evidence surfaces, it is often met with official denials and obfuscations. The tension between the need for transparency and the desire of those in power to maintain secrecy creates a persistent undercurrent of mistrust. The future of accountability in this realm depends on several factors. First, the proliferation of independent media and digital transparency initiatives offers hope that government secrets will not remain hidden forever. Second, the development of advanced forensic and verification technologies may make it increasingly difficult for false narratives to go unchallenged. Finally, a vigilant and educated citizenry committed to critical thinking and public debate is perhaps the most important bulwark against the manipulation of truth. Looking forward, the tools of deception are evolving rapidly. As governments and private entities develop ever more sophisticated means of information control, the potential for future false flag operations, whether physical, digital, or a combination thereof, remains a profound concern. The challenge will be to harness technology not only to create illusions, but also to uncover them, ensuring that truth can emerge even from the darkest of shadows. Epilogue: a call to vigilance. The story of false flag operations is one of perpetual caution, a reminder that the truth is a fragile, contested space. As we reflect on the historical examples and modern manifestations of deception, we are compelled to ask, how can we, as citizens, protect ourselves against the manipulation of truth? The answer lies in an unwavering commitment to transparency, accountability, and critical inquiry. In the end, the legacy of false flags is not merely a series of isolated events, but a testament to the power of illusions to reshape history. It is a call to remain ever vigilant, to question the narratives presented to us, and to insist on evidence before accepting the official line. Only by doing so can we hope to reclaim the truth and safeguard the future from those who would manipulate it for their own gain. The digital age, personal voices, and the struggle for accountability, the digital era of deception. As the 21st century progressed, a new frontier emerged for the art of false flags. No longer limited to physical acts, bombs, hijackings, staged terrorist incidents, the realm of deception had evolved into the digital sphere. Advanced computer technologies, artificial intelligence, and the global reach of the internet allowed state and non-state actors alike to fabricate events, alter audio and video evidence, and disseminate manipulated information at lightning speed. The world watched in both awe and apprehension as deepfakes and digitally altered images began appearing in news cycles. Entire narratives could be constructed in minutes with convincing footage that, on first viewing, might convince even the most discerning eye. Governments and shadowy agencies recognize this power. In covert research facilities, analysts experimented with creating simulated crises on virtual platforms. They envisioned scenarios where a single, convincingly edited video of a high-profile leader making incendiary statements could incite international chaos before forensic teams had a chance to verify the authenticity. Within this digital ecosystem, conspiracy theorists found fertile ground. Social media platforms were inundated with clips and memes alleging that recent terror attacks or political scandals were not what they seemed. In online forums, the phrase false flag evolved from a reference to physical provocations into a catch-all explanation for nearly every major crisis. For some citizens, every viral video or tweet now came with a default disclaimer: what if this is all a setup? This pervasive skepticism began to erode trust in even well-established institutions. Yet, amid the confusion, a quiet revolution was also taking shape. Independent fact-checking organizations and blockchain-based verification systems emerged as potential countermeasures. Some journalists embrace these tools to authenticate video footage and data in near real time. For instance, during a major cyber attack that rattled several European countries, a team of digital forensic experts was able to trace the origin of the manipulated video evidence to a previously unknown network operating out of an off-grid facility. Their findings were later corroborated by independent labs, lending credence to the idea that while digital deception was more potent than ever, it was not unstoppable. This chapter of digital transformation underscores a crucial paradox. The same technologies that empower false flags also provide the means to expose them. In the global theater of deception, the stakes have never been higher, and the race between fabrication and verification continues unabated. Voices from the shadows beyond the headlines and digital artifacts. The true cost of false flag operations is measured in the personal testimonies of those who have suffered because of them. Whistleblowers, survivors, and investigative journalists have all emerged to tell their stories, often at great personal risk. Samuel Reyes, a young man whose father was conscripted into a war ignited by manipulated intelligence, became one such voice. Growing up in the aftermath of a conflict whose origins were shrouded in deception, Samuel spent years searching for answers. His father, a gentle farmer from a small Midwestern town, had recounted his own nightmares of receiving orders based on false pretenses. Samuel's quest led him to secret interviews with retired intelligence officers, late-night visits to dusty archives, and countless hours poring over declassified documents. His emotional journey is one of heartbreak and determination, a microcosm of the broader struggle for truth amid the labyrinth of state secrecy. Across continents, similar stories emerged. In Eastern Europe, a former intelligence operative, whom the media later referred to as Agent Mira, risked everything to leak internal memos that hinted at covert provocations designed to justify crackdowns on dissent. In a tearful interview recorded on a hidden camera, Agent Mira described a moment when she witnessed senior officials laughing over plans to manufacture an incident that would later be blamed on political adversaries. Though she could not name names, her voice carried the weight of decades of silent complicity. Her revelations, though fragmentary, fueled international debates about accountability and the cost of secrecy. In Latin America, families of those lost during the Dirty Wars recalled how government agents had sometimes staged attacks or kidnappings to justify brutal repression. A mother in Chile tearfully recounted how her son vanished after authorities claimed he was caught in a clash between insurgents, an explanation that never matched the harrowing details her community knew all too well. Such personal narratives remind us that behind every orchestrated crisis lie real lives devastated by deception. These voices from the shadows that the human toll of false flag operations is profound. They compel us to look beyond abstract theories and recognize that every manipulated event ripples outward, leaving scars that may last generations. In a world where truth is continually contested, these personal testimonies serve as urgent calls for transparency and accountability. The struggle for accountability in the aftermath of each alleged false flag operation, a critical and often uphill battle for accountability ensues. For those who suspect that major crises have been orchestrated rather than occurring naturally, the path to the truth is fraught with challenges. Secrecy in national security claims frequently shroud key documents, while official investigations often produce partial or contradictory findings. Independent journalists and advocacy groups have emerged as the stalwart defenders of truth. Their work is a constant reminder that when power wields deception, it is the citizenry's duty to demand transparency. Across the globe, projects have been launched to digitize government archives, to promote Freedom of Information Act requests, and to create platforms for whistleblowers to share critical evidence without fear of reprisal. Yet, the battle is not without cost. Whistleblowers, such as the fictional Colonel Bradford from earlier narratives, often risk everything when they step forward. In many instances, they face harassment, loss of employment, or even physical harm. The reluctance of official bodies to fully declassify documents only fuels public suspicion. Every redacted file, every vague statement becomes fodder for conspiracy theorists and for those who genuinely seek to hold power to account. The challenge is to cultivate a balanced approach, one that demands rigorous inquiry without sliding into blanket cynicism. Scholars argue that a healthy democracy depends on an informed citizenry that can distinguish between well-substantiated claims and baseless rumors. In a perfect world, investigative bodies would operate free from political interference, and the truth would eventually out. But history shows that the struggle for accountability is an ongoing battle, one that each new generation must engage with if society is ever to heal from the wounds of deception. The future frontier, cyber and space false flags looking ahead, the potential for false flag operations is evolving rapidly. The digital revolution is transforming not only the way information is disseminated, but also the methods by which it can be manipulated. Future false flags may not involve physical acts of violence at all. Instead, they could be entirely cyber-based. Imagine a scenario where a deep-fake video of a world leader declaring war circulates online, inciting immediate panic and a cascade of defensive measures. Or consider a cyber attack on critical infrastructure that is later blamed on a foreign adversary, even though it was orchestrated from within. In such a digital age, the boundaries between reality and illusion blur to near invisibility, leaving governments and citizens alike scrambling to verify authenticity. Space, too, becomes a new theater for potential deception. As nations develop advanced satellite technologies and invest in space exploration, the possibility of staging an alien false flag becomes tantalizing. Could a government engineer a UFO sighting from orbit to manipulate public sentiment? The convergence of advanced optics, computer simulations, and controlled space missions makes such scenarios increasingly plausible. In this context, the term false flag takes on an entirely new dimension, one that is as much about virtual reality as it is about physical events. While these future threats may sound like science fiction, the underlying principle remains unchanged. Those in power will always seek to control the narrative by any means necessary. As technology continues to outpace regulatory frameworks, the need for robust digital verification methods becomes ever more urgent. The same critical thinking and insistence on transparency that have served as our defenses against past deceptions must now extend into the digital and cosmic realms. The philosophical dilemma revisited at its core, the phenomenon of false flag operations challenges our deepest assumptions about truth, trust, and governance. If a society can be manipulated by carefully orchestrated illusions, what remains of the democratic ideal? The philosophical implications are as vast as they are unsettling. For centuries, citizens have placed their trust in institutions to act in their best interests, to protect and inform rather than deceive. When those institutions engage in, or are suspected of engaging in, false flag operations, that trust is irrevocably undermined. The idea that the state might sacrifice the truth to achieve political ends is a betrayal of the social contract, a betrayal that echoes in every manipulated crisis. Yet, some realists argue that in an imperfect world, leaders sometimes face choices so dire that the ends might justify the means. If the survival of a nation or the prevention of a greater evil depends on the willingness to bend the truth, can that be condoned? Such arguments are fraught with moral peril. The risk is that once deception is normalized, it becomes a slippery slope to ever greater abuses of power. For those who cherish democracy and human rights, the answer is clear. No cause can justify the deliberate manipulation of truth, no matter how urgent the threat may seem. Accountability, transparency, and the unwavering pursuit of fact must remain the cornerstones of a free society. Only by holding our leaders to these standards can we hope to prevent the cycle of deception from eroding the very foundations of our collective trust. Epilogue, a call to eternal vigilance. As we bring this installment of our exploration to a close, we are left with a stark reminder. In the grand theater of deception, the masks of power are ever changing, and the stage is set for new acts of provocation. The legacy of false flag operations, woven through centuries of history, serves as both a cautionary tale and an urgent call to vigilance. We must never cease to question the narratives presented to us, to demand evidence and transparency, and to foster an environment where truth is protected at all costs. In an era where digital deceptions and clandestine operations can reshape global events in an instant, the role of an informed and critical citizenry has never been more important. This narrative, drawn from the hidden recesses of history and projected into the uncertain future, is not merely an account of past manipulations. It is an invitation to remain ever watchful, to safeguard our democratic ideals, and to honor the memory of those whose lives were upended by illusions. Let us remember that behind every major crisis, there may lie a story of orchestrated provocation, a story that challenges us to look beyond official statements and see the world as it truly is, a complex tapestry of ambition, deception, and the relentless human pursuit of power.